Alright, legends, welcome back to the show. We're going to get into Halloween 5. Have a little chat about that there. The Revenge of Michael Myers, sorry. 1989. I need to learn how to speak before I start these things. 89 on a budget of 5.5 million. And it made back 11.6 million at the box office. And of course, after the last movie, there was no doubt that they were going to continue it. As I said in my little review of that, so far, the previous movie was probably my favourite in the series at this point. Now, I feel this one here isn't quite as strong as the previous one, but it is what it is. It's started like a trilogy in the centre of the movies. Prior movie, this one, and then the following movie would be like a trilogy. So this one pretty much starts off where the last one ended off, and we get to see a bit of a different side to Myers getting shot and falling down the mine shaft. Sheriff Meeker and the lynch mob that were tracking him down in the last movie, and the state police tossed dynamite down to finish him off, but he escapes into a nearby creek before the dynamite explodes, and he stumbles upon an elderly hermit who nurses him back to health after he falls into a coma. So that's the open to the movie. Then we cut to 1 year later on, of course, October 30th, 1989. Michael awakens, and this guy has been nursed him back to health and been keeping him safe for a full year. Michael wakes up, stabs the hermit to death, and returns to Haddonfield to find his niece, Jamie Lloyd, one more time. So Jamie, in this movie, she's been admitted to Haddonfield Children's Clinic after, at the end of the last movie, of course, we've seen her attacking her foster mother, and Jamie's been rendered mute due to psychological trauma that she suffered in the prior movie. She's suffering from nightmares and seizures, and she's also exhibiting signs of a telepathic link with her uncle, of course, Michael. And once again, Dr. Loomis is there. He becomes aware of Jamie's psychic link with Michael, and he tries to convince Meeker, the sheriff, that Michael is still alive. Michael, meanwhile, stabs Jamie's foster sister Rachel to death and begins stalking their friend Tina. Michael kills Tina's boyfriend Mike, then poses as him by wearing a mask that Tina had given to Mike earlier. So he's been a bit stealthy in this movie. Later that night, Tina and her friends Sam and Spitz go to a Halloween party at a farm, sensing that Tina is in danger. Jamie, having partially regained her ability to speak, escapes to try to go and warn her, while Sam and Spitz are having sex in the barn. Of course, it's only a matter of time before you get that in these old slasher movies. Michael impales Spitz with a pitchfork and decapitates Sam with a scythe. Tina finds the bodies and goes to warn nearby police deputies, but finds that Michael has already killed them. Now, I just glossed over that entire section of the movie, but for me, that's where the movie kind of started to lose steam. It was that whole sequence of the Halloween party at the farm, and there's a lot of bait moments where they try to build up the tension a little bit, and you're expecting Michael to pop out, and maybe he does and maybe he doesn't, but it just seemed, for me, it just felt like it went on for far too long. And honestly, at that point in the movie, I was starting to lose interest in a big way, because you know exactly what's going to happen to all these characters, but it's just how it's happening and how it's built up, and it just didn't feel that it was handled quite as well as everything in the prior movie. But where are we at? yeah, Tina, after finding the bodies of the two police deputies, she flees, but Jamie and her friend Billy, another little guy from the clinic, they arrive, and Michael begins chasing Jamie in a car. But that's a great little sequence in the movie. That was well done. But he manages to crash into a tree. Michael gets out of the car, and Tina sacrifices herself to allow Jamie and Billy time to escape. Loomis arrives, and Jamie finally agrees to help him stop Michael for good. The whole way through the movie up to this point, he's been really bullying the child at this point to contact him through the mind, figure out where he's at, what he's doing. You need to do this. We can't stop him without you, more or less. And with Jamie's help, Loomis and Sheriff Meeker have created a setup at the old Myers house to lure Michael back to his abandoned childhood home. And suddenly the police receive a call saying Michael has broken into the clinic, which prompts Meeker and almost all the police to leave. This call isn't accurate, however, it's just a diversion, and Michael appears and kills the trooper sitting in the patrol car outside the house, which to me played a bit strange. If you're trying to set up a trap for Michael Myers and you're trying to get him into this house and using Jamie as the bait to get him into the house, having a state trooper or trooper's car sitting outside the house just seemed a bit weird. But it is what it is, one of these old 80s slasher movies, and you're just on it for the fact that it's there, more or less. So he kills this trooper before he goes into the house. Loomis meets him as soon as he comes through the door, tries to reason with him, but Michael slashes him and throws him over the banister. Michael kills our deputy who's protecting Jamie before chasing her throughout the house, and Jamie hides in a laundry chute. We see earlier in the movie that this door in the basement was hard to open, so that plays into it later on in the movie where she's trapped inside this chute and Michael, he's trying to get into it to kill her. That was well done. This little girl that played Jamie, her acting is top notch in these movies. She plays it very, very well, both in this film and the prior film. But where are we at? Jamie hides in the laundry chute. Yep. Fleeing upstairs. Michael can't get her out. Jamie finds the bodies of Max the dog in this movie. There's always a dog turns up in these movies somewhere along the line, or a pet of some sort, and you're sort of wondering at one point that the dog survive. In this movie, the dog doesn't survive. Rachel and Mike, they're in the attic as well. They're dead bodies. Michael, he finds Jamie, attempts to kill her one more time, but stops when Jamie addresses him as uncle. Removes his mask. Michael removes his own mask. When Jamie touches his face, he goes into a fit of rage. Chases her once again. Jamie heads down the stairs to find Loomis. Loomis uses Jamie to lure Michael into a trap. Shoots him with a tranquilizer gun and drops a net on him. Of course, Michael beats the trap, and Louise drugged Michael unconscious with a... Where are we at now? I keep losing my place in these notes. Absolute disaster at keeping up with my own reviews. But it is what it is. Brings a little bit of realism to these podcasts. It's all good. Yes, a drug Michael is beaten unconscious with a wooden plank until he eventually suffers. Loomis eventually suffers from a stroke and collapses on top of Michael. Meeker and the rest of the police return shortly to and Michael's Meeker and the rest of the police that were lured away by that fake call return to the house, and Michael is taken into custody. And Sheriff Meeker assures Jamie that Michael, who is locked in the cell, is going to remain in prison until he dies. But Jamie doesn't believe him and remarks that Michael will never die. One of the officers goes back to bring Jamie home when a mysterious man in black. My goodness, my England when I'm writing stuff is terrible. Yeah, they're going to take Jamie home, but one of the officers is going to bring her back home. Returns into the police station after a mysterious man in black. You see him popping up a couple of times in this movie. I kind of feel, and I'm going to look at some production notes whenever I get through this here, like I kind of feel that the part of this man in black was probably a bigger part at one point in the script for this movie, and it definitely plays into the next movie, where it's, again, there's going to be a trilogy. At this point, I have no recollection whatsoever of the films from this point on, so I'm looking forward to seeing the next one. I'm just going to be seeing it with fresh eyes at this point. This guy turns up, you see there's like a tattoo on his, I'm trying to recall, it was a tattoo on his wrist. There's definitely, you see the same tattoo in Michael Myers. At one point I saw on Michael's wrist, but this guy has the same tattoo and whatnot. He goes into the police station and there's an explosion. The officer, hearing gunfire, the officer is going to take Jamie home. He hears the gunfire inside the police station, and he rushes back inside after warning Jamie to stay with the car. When the officer doesn't return, Jamie gets the nerve up to go back inside to see what's going on. She finds the entire station destroyed from the explosion, along with Meeker and several other officers dead on the floor. And Jamie discovers Michael's cell empty and the back door of the police station broken open. No sign of Michael or this man in black. Of course, at the end of the movie, she breaks down in tears, realising Michael's free to continue terrorising Haddonfield. And that's where we close out in the movie. As I say, I feel that it just wasn't as strong as the prior installment, but it is what it is. These movies are bubblegum for the brain. So let me see. Let's get into some production notes here to see if there's any details on that. Man in Black. Let me see. I'm just going through this stuff literally as I'm recording here. No, I can't seem to see anything. I don't know where I heard it at before. I'm pretty sure I heard it in a podcast somewhere along the line, or it could be talking out of my arse completely at this point. But I do believe that character of the Man in Black, you see him a couple of times throughout the movie, turning up, gets off a bus, and like a cowboy sort of a character. Yeah, and then at the very end turns up again. I kind of feel at some point that character was bigger in an earlier draft of the script, or they just maybe even when they got to actually editing the movie, maybe felt that he could be scaled back a little bit to keep a little bit of mystery about him, which of course does work. By the end of the movie, whenever he turns up at the police station, you almost have kind of forgotten about him at this point. And you're like, once again, presented with, who the heck is this guy? What's he after? And, of course, walks into the police station and the explosion goes off and disappears along with Michael. It's a good enough movie. It's definitely not one I would skip over if I was going through the series again. But for me, once again, going through these movies from beginning to end, the one prior to this was definitely Halloween 4. The Return of Michael Myers was actually a better movie than The Revenge of Michael Myers. So I'm looking forward to getting into the next one. Hopefully I'll get that by Friday, or depending on whenever you're hearing this podcast, it could be 20 years from now, and it will be online at that point. And I'm really am talking nonsense at this point, so I'm going to cut the review at this point, and yeah, I'll talk to you all in the next episode, and until then, stay safe. This has been a production of Coins Age Media. Thank you so much for listening.